I want you to use is this wheel right here. So what you do when using this saturation index is you don't have to do this math. You're going to line up the two readings that we had, alkalinity and calcium hardness. So I find the alkalinity was 110, and I line the 260 up with the 110, and then I go over to this window over here, and I set my parameters where the pH would be perfectly balanced is at 7.4. So at 7.8, where we were at, to be perfectly balanced, and that would be at 76 degrees. Let me find 76 on here. Would be right there at 0, but we're actually at 7.8. So if we go up from 7.4, 0.4, 0.5, 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, that's our 4 difference that we were out of. So that 0.4 that we did in that mathematical formula holds true, but we did it a lot faster just by lining up those two numbers. Because my actual pH is above the line, it's telling me it's scaling. If my actual pH would have been below the line, it would have told me that we were corrosive, that the water was chewing away at the pumps and the shells and the motor. You know, if we do a new pool startup in 6 or 7 months, all of a sudden you get these big pock marks on the side where it's etching and peeling and falling apart, is simply because somebody didn't give the water calcium. And water is naturally aggressive, and what it seeks to balance itself is calcium. And either you give the water calcium, or it says, okay, don't worry about giving it to me, I'll take it. And it takes it from the shell. And that's why your pool starts to deteriorate or fall apart. We want to blame the Marsite guy. He didn't use enough aggregate. He didn't do something right. No, it's because we didn't maintain the calcium in the water. So at this point, we adjusted our calcium, and it took 5 drops of that reagent to go from 7.8 to 7.5. So now I'm going to go back, and if I go to here and I wanted to decrease the pH, and this is in the back of that little booklet. If I want to decrease the pH in this pool, and I'm using muriatic acid or hydrochloric, muriatic acid and hydrochloric are the same chemical, just renamed to make it a little more palatable. And let's say this pool is 20,000 gallons. I go down here, and it took me, I think I said 5 drops. I go to where this lines up, and to get that pH down to the 7.4 or 7.5 I'm looking for, it tells me how much chemical to add, which would have been 2.66 quarts. So your book, instead of having to do the math and do these different charts that we have to do, we can actually use it. If I wanted to increase my pH and I was using soda ash and I had to use the base demand, I go to the number of drops, line it up underneath my pool volume. In this case, we're using 20 gallons. If I use 5 drops to increase it, it tells me exactly how much chemical to add, 3.20 pounds. If you don't see your pool volume up here, let's say it was 25,000, then I would combine the 20 and the 5,000 numbers, add them together to use that much chemical. If I was adding chlorine and I wanted to make an increase, let's say I wanted to increase my chlorine, depending on the type of chlorine, it tells you how much I need to use. So if I'm using 10 to 12% available or active chlorine, which is your liquid bleach, I'm going to use 1.6 to 1.3 pints of chlorine to raise it 1 part per million. If I wanted to raise it 3, I would triple that amount. If I was using calcium hypochlorite, which is your 60% chlorine, and if you look on your labels, it'll say 60% or 68, whatever ones come closest, use that number. It tells you how much to use to adjust that chlorine level. But again, that's just for 1 part. If I wanted to make a 3 or 4 part change, then I would multiply that number I see by the number of parts I want to change it. But that Taylor Test Kit booklet is set up so that you don't have to use these mathematical formulas and equations that you would normally have to use when we're doing actual test work or doing it in the field. and let's go to the chemical adjustment worksheet so that we can put this in here. So if I wanted to increase my chlorine level in a 20,000 gallon pool, I put the actual pool volume. It's right there written for you. And I'm going to use liquid chlorine bleach, which is 10.7 fluid ounces, to make a 1 part per million change. My desired chemical change, let's say I wanted to increase it 3 parts per million. So 3 parts per million divided by the 1 would give me the 3. 20,000 divided by the 10,000 would give me 2. Then I could multiply the 10.7 times 2 times 3 equals 642 fluid ounces. So there's 64 ounces in a half a gallon, or 128 in a full gallon. So it's telling me to make a change of 3 parts per million to add a half a gallon, or 64.2 ounces. And we divide that by the number of ounces in a gallon, which is 128, equals 0.5. So it would equal 0.5, or a half a gallon of chlorine, to make that change. Again, no reason to know that worksheet. You have your Taylor test kit, and to make those adjustments, all those charts are in the back of the test kit to make it simple and easy for you to make these adjustments and changes without having to do these mathematical formulas. But I think the girls in marketing, again, already get a hold of this stuff and immediately put it up online. So there's a way, if you want these worksheets to figure out for your pool, if you feel comfortable doing that, you can download those and use them for your pool. Once you start making changes, I know my counterpart, Randy, made a good comment the other day, is in the backpack. If you happen to have a backpack, lift it up, take a Sharpie marker, and write down how much that chemical changes it. So once you've done the formulas, the person that you're training or working with doesn't have to go to you every time to say how much to make that chemical. It's already a little footnote that's written into your backpack area. But both of these sheets, the chemical adjustment worksheet and the balance worksheets, are there. But again, you have the saturation index with the wheel that will do it for you, that does the balance really quick, really easy, or you can do the worksheet, but both of them give you the exact same numbers. I can't emphasize enough on getting your customers, or if you're actually a maintenance person, to focus on water balance rather than just trying to go after pH and chlorine every day. If you focus on that water balance and you start to understand that everybody's pool is going to have a tendency to do something. Some people may have a pool where there has a pH that constantly rises all the time. Then overcorrect it down to the low end and let that demon take it up. Or on the same token, if you're using a type of chemical that drives your pH down, then you want to take it to the high end of the ideal range and let it drive it back down. So that way you're only adding chemicals to the pool once or twice a week rather than chasing perfection every single day. Again, I get it, but I'm just trying to find ways of getting you more time to do other things, since our main focus is not the swimming pool. And springtime's here. If you haven't thought about it, now's the best time with all the pollen, and your agronomics is going to start with fertilization. Get with your Chadwell supply rep or your vendor who you buy and start getting some algicide to prevent the blooms that always happen right at the beginning of startup season. So my suggestion is always use the polymetric or the copper-based algicides. They work really, really well. We have a good variety of different ones. Just remember, an algicide is a preventative. It's not a treatment. They do sell treatments, but I'm looking for you before you get algae. It's far easier to prevent algae than it is to remove it. And the #1 most cost-effective thing that you can do to prevent algae is brushing your pool and walls on your pool or spa on a routine basis is a very, very important preventative measure, and it will keep the algae down. But if you're having a struggle with that, the algicides will take up a lot of that. And again, my recommendation is always go with the heavier metals, but also follow the directions. If you don't use them correctly, you could stain the pool if you do not follow the directions, but they're clearly written on there. They all want elevated levels of chlorine when you add any type of algicide. So